Hello and welcome back to another week of the Korean Beauty Show podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Lee. You are in the right place if you are looking to spruce up your skincare routine in 2022 and pick up on some Kbeauty tips, tricks, and all the latest news from Korea. That is what we talk about on this show. A big warm welcome if you are joining us for the first time. If you are an old hat, if you have been around for a while, hopefully you would have heard on last week's shows that we are now dropping 2 episodes a week. So from now on, we are going to be doing on Tuesdays, basically just a little bit of a look at what's going on in the news, new releases, question of the week, that type of thing. And then on Thursday's episode, we are going to be taking a deep dive into a specific part of either the industry, latest trends, skincare, makeup advice, all of those sorts of things. So I have a lot of different kinds of topics in the works for this year as well. I know we've tended to focus up until now mainly just on skincare, a little bit of makeup. So what I want to do this year is take more of a look at sort of the broader parts of the beauty industry in Korea. So what's going on in nail trends, eyelash trends, eyebrow trends, hair, all of that sort of stuff, and just take maybe a bit of a more well-rounded look at the industry and trends outside of skincare. So obviously some of these things are going to be more specific to what's going on here in Seoul in particular at the moment, but just to give you guys, I guess, a more well-rounded idea of what's trending, what's hot, what's not. So that's my plan. So if that sounds like something that you want to hear about, then stick around. Make sure you hit subscribe so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. That way, when they drop into the feed, they will just automatically come up as an update on your phone or however else you're listening. Probably phone, I would say, if it's an update. I don't know if they can do updates on computer yet. Maybe they can. Anyway, so look, on to this Tuesday's episode. Now, I have a bit of exciting news for my US-based followers, or listeners rather, and that is that this week's podcast is brought to you by some new Kbeauty releases that are now available on Veryshop. That is veryshop.com. You can now shop the hottest trending brands from Korea, including Jellicoe and Subi Beauty on veryshop.com now. So if you've been looking to get your hands on some stuff in the States, go and check out veryshop.com. All right. Now, onto the news headlines, the Korean news headlines for this week. The South Korean Ministry of Food and Drug Safety has suggested a ban on the use of a couple of different compounds in cosmetics called perfluorinated compounds, and also they have banned the use of persistent organic pollutants, which are sometimes referred to as POPs. So I saw the news headline and I was like, hold on a minute. Okay, so we're banning things in cosmetics, right? We're back to that old chestnut. But what are persistent organic pollutants? I've not heard that term before. So basically what they are talking about is carbon-based chemicals that last in the environment for a long time. So, they don't kind of disappear, so they can potentially damage things like environment, wildlife, and people. So that's what they're talking about. And then they've also added 8 perfluorinated compounds to their prohibited substances list. Now, I won't go through them because they won't really make sense to most people unless you're sort of working in this area, but I will include a list of the 8 compounds on the show notes for today. So if you are interested in finding out what those are, just to give you a little bit of a flavor for it, one of them is called ammonium perfluoronanonate. So not really things that most people would have heard of before, but if you're interested, go and check them out. The reason I wanted to talk about this is because the reason that the government has decided to, amend, I guess, the existing legislative framework is because they are trying to respond to public concern about, what's in our cosmetics and clean beauty. So they're basically being pressured to ensure that cosmetic products contain no nasties. That's really what they're talking about. And I've spoken about my views on this in the past before, and that is that I just think a lot of this kind of thing is unfortunately fear-mongering and, consumers are scared and they think that there's, something maybe in cosmetics that is going to really hurt them. Things like fragrance I see, attacked a lot. People say, oh, the fragrance made me break out or something like that. When in reality, there are so few people in the wider population that have an allergy, for example, to something like fragrance, that really this is not a thing that most people should be worried about. What they should be worried about is whether you like the particular fragrance in the product or not. And normally when I see comments like that by, a lot of skincare users, it's not possible that this many people that are using skincare products have a genuine fragrance allergy. So it's just a preference. What they're really saying when they say, oh, this, product, doesn't agree with my skin or whatnot, they're really just saying, I don't like the fragrance of that particular product. And that is totally fine. But I think the bigger problem with the clean beauty movement is that it's just an oxymoron. There is no such thing as clean beauty. And, a lot of the big box retailers have a lot to answer for when it comes to stuff like clean beauty, because they have rating systems and, if you include these chemicals, you are not clean, but if you include the rest of them, then you are. And, that then puts a lot of pressure on brands to then, have call outs on their products saying, okay, well, we don't include this or that. And it's a really, really vicious cycle because, consumers then go, oh my God, well, is what I've been using up until now, is that dirty? Is that nasty? Is that unclean? And then it's just a perpetual cycle. So I'm a little bit disappointed to see that the Korean government has then also jumped on board and basically started, picking out ingredients in cosmetics that they think are unclean, and they're, trying to gravitate towards a more clean beauty angle. I do see a lot of this in Kbeauty, particularly on apps like Hwae, which is one of the really, really popular local apps here where people review products and then they also, I guess, assign a rating to them based on how clean they are. And a lot of times what they're doing is they're manufacturing to the EWG standard, which, basically gives a green light, an orange light, and a red light to various different chemicals that go into cosmetics. So, for example, a plant extract would have an EWG green grade rating of 1, very safe. But then something like retinol, which most people, in the Western world would agree is a very well studied and a well understood ingredient, that's given a rating of 9 and given a red flag. So I think that this whole, I guess train, the clean beauty train, would we call it that everyone is jumping on at the moment, has a lot of different problems, and I wouldn't disagree with it so much if it wasn't creating even more confusion. I think when we start sort of categorizing willy-nilly ingredients as good, bad, red light, green light, that just can cause a lot of problems. It's just not as simple as that is the reason. In things like when we're talking about foods, I understand in Australia these days at a lot of schools, they have like a red light, green light system for food. So this is like a safe food to be eating at school, and that's things like apples and bananas and, fruit and veg. And then they have the red light, which is stuff like, we don't want you bringing, cookies and, hot dogs and stuff like that to school. I'm making this up. I don't know. I don't have a child at school in Australia. But, that is a little bit more black and white than saying that a particular ingredient in a cosmetic product is, problematic. It's just not as easy as that, because there are so many different things that go into cosmetics to make a well-rounded, cosmetically elegant, safe formula that, just picking out one tiny ingredient, and this is the thing I see over and over again with fragrance ingredients, people go, oh, it's got fragrance in it, automatically it's a no-go for sensitive skin, and that's just not the case. That's not how formulation works. So I don't know. I am am a little disappointed to see that in the news. But look, I think clean beauty, unfortunately, does not look like it's going away anytime soon. I think we just need to get a little more savvy as consumers and, maybe even try and push back on some of the bigger retailers that are trying to introduce all of these rating systems, because if the stated aim is to, make things easier for consumers, I don't think that this does that. That's my personal opinion. Happy to hear if other people have a different opinion, obviously, but my personal opinion is that the whole idea of clean beauty makes things even more confusing, because then people are trying to find a couple of ingredients that they know of that might be unclean and just avoiding them, when, at the end of the day, maybe you don't need to avoid them. You probably don't need to avoid them. And, having certain ingredients in a formula does not make it unclean. Having retinol in your product does not make the ingredient or the product unclean in any way. But I think these kind of rating systems force everything into, or try to force everything into a neat little box that just doesn't really exist. So that was the headline for this week. Come and find me if you've got thoughts. Always happy to hear yours. I am at lauren.kbeauty on Instagram. Now, question of the week, and I hope one of my Instagram followers does not mind me sharing this as the question of the week, but I just loved this question. So we have been chatting about Singles Inferno on the show, which is a new Korean reality TV show about people dating, basically. It's a dating show. They throw them on an island that they're calling like the Hell Island, I guess. Inferno is how they've translated it in English. And, they go through challenges and things like that, and then they can spend time in paradise with their chosen person if they win their challenges. Basically, that's how it's working, and they have to match up with each other as well. There's a whole system. Anyway, so this question I just thought was so great, because my follower said, she was like, I noticed that they're always saying things like, let's talk casually. And she was like, is that the English equivalent of saying like, let's chat? Like, it's just such an odd thing to say. We would never say that where I'm from. Like, what are they trying to say? And I knew immediately what she was talking about. So this kind of thing, you'll often see it translated to like, let's talk more casually, or let's, drop the formalities or something like that. This is a Korean language thing, and you will see it if you watch Korean TV, basically. If you're watching the 예능 program, which is like the, I guess, chat shows, reality shows. If you're watching K-drama, maybe even in Korean movies, probably less so. It's the kind of thing that you will see when people are developing a relationship. So you'll see this pop up and they're like, let's chat casually. So, okay, let's do a little Korean lesson. So in Korean, there are levels of formality that are built into the language. So to strangers, as in people you don't know that you've just met, or, a service person, maybe the waiter or someone serving you, you are supposed to speak what is called 존댓말, or formal language. And it is very polite, a very polite way of speaking, but it also builds distance and, I guess, respect into the language that you're speaking. So basically things like your pleases and thank yous are automatically built in. That's probably the best way to describe it. In English, the most similar thing I can think of is it's the way that you would speak to a stranger on the phone, like very polite, very formal, like, I'm just wondering if it would be possible if we could change our booking. Thank you so much. Whereas to a friend, you'd be like, oi, let's change the dates on the booking, and the friend would be like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, you're not going to talk like that to a stranger. So Korean basically has different verbs and different ways that different words even that you will use to refer to things if you're speaking to someone in this really polite language. So basically what people are saying when they are suggesting, hey, let's lower our language or let's chat casually, they're trying to say, let's speak to each other as though we are friends, family, or the same age as each other. So they're changing the verbs that they use to each other. And it's a way to kind of put them, I guess, on equal standing. So one person is not higher than the other, more senior than the other, or more worthy of respect, but they are the same. And that is, in Korea, just a very, very important part of Korean culture, is that it's a hierarchical society. So the people at the top are the people that are in power, maybe your boss, maybe someone older than you, like your grandma or your grandpa, and to show respect to them, you need to talk to them in a respectful way, which is why we use formal language. But then to people that are younger than you, you don't need to show respect. So you can use a lot shorter language and a different set of language to people like that. So I think this is a really hard thing for foreigners to get their head around. I remember when I first moved to Korea, I was like, well, I want to get close enough to as many people as possible so that I can speak casual language to them. I can speak less formally. But, you know, over the years, I guess what I've realized is that, you know, there are some people that even though I could speak to them in 반대말, in like half language, that's literally what it translates to, 반대말, you know, even though I could speak to them like that, I don't want to, because I want them to know that I respect them and I see them on the same level as me. And in particular, I speak to my employees in Korea in 존댓말. Even though I am their boss, I don't need to do that. I do it because I'm like, you know, I respect the work you're doing. I respect you as a person, and I don't want to speak down to you when you have to speak up to me because I'm your boss. Like, I would like you to know that I think that you're worthy of respect. So there are a lot of bosses in Korea that don't do that, that they will speak down to their employees. And it very much changes the power balance and the power dynamic. So on these shows, when they are saying, hey, let's speak as though we're on the same level, it's to create closeness in the relationship is basically what they're saying. And on this show in particular, one of the rules is that they're not allowed to know how old each other is or what their job is. And I think part of the reason the producers did that is because if Koreans knew that about each other, automatically it totally changes the power dynamic, you know. Who's the oldest, who's the youngest, who's in charge. So by saying, hey, you're not allowed to reveal this, it's actually very off-putting to a lot of Koreans because they're like, oh, well, I don't know. Are you more senior than me? Are you less senior than me? Like, so I think that's why they're suggesting to each other, hey, let's just chat with each other as though we are on the same level because we don't know if we are or not. So look, I thought that was such a great question. So thank you to the follower that gave that question or that asked that question. I hope you don't mind me using it on the show, but I just thought it was a really good one and something that other people might be curious about as well, because it's, yeah, you'll notice that kind of thing a lot, just translations from Korean to English that don't make a lot of sense. Off the top of my head, another one that I can think of that used to really, really confuse me. If you watch a lot of drama, you'll know that like after people have been hanging out for a while, someone will say something like 내가 먼저 간다 or 먼저 갈게요, which is like translated in English to I'll leave first or I will go first. And I was like, what is that? Like, who says that? You're hanging out with someone, you're like, yep, I'm leaving first. It's like, okay, cool. Like, why? But I think the more realistic English translation will just be like, okay, I'm heading off or I'm heading out. I'm gonna run, like that kind of thing. But you'll often see it literally translated to I will leave first, which just sounds a bit strange. So there are things like that that are just peculiarities of the language, I think, that, you know, don't translate as well in English. You know, Koreans will often ask 밥 먹었어 when you like greet them for the first time, which is literally have you eaten. Now if you are like, oh yes, I've eaten and this is what I ate, that's really weird, because basically just what they're trying to say is like, hey, how's it hanging, how's it going, like everything good? Whereas, you know, in English, if you respond to someone start going, oh no, actually I've got a sore back and, you know, my cat died, people think that's a bit strange. Like, hey, I was just casually asking how you are and now you're actually answering me with like, you know, how you are. I don't actually want to know, it's just a greeting. it's the same kind of thing. So these are all just peculiarities. If you are watching a bit of Korean TV, just keep an ear out for them. You'll probably hear them and you hopefully will then know what they're talking about. So yeah, that was just something a bit different for the question of the week. If you guys have questions about the Korean culture, shows you're watching or whatnot that you would like answered, let's do it on the show. It does not have to be skincare, makeup, hair, whatever related. It can be just more broadly about Korean language, Korean culture, whatever you guys want to know about Korea, living in Korea, life in Korea, hit me up. I'm happy to chat through that on the show as well. Okay, so the new product releases for this week, I thought I might as well cover the ones that are now available in the States at veryshop.com, which are from Subi and Jellicoe. So the product that you guys will now be able to shop in the States, and of course everyone can shop these on Style Story already, but if you are wanting, I guess, domestic shipping in the States, want to get your Kbeauty products a little bit quicker, you can check these out. So the products that they have are Subi Brightening Powder Cleanser, they've got the Subi Bare Skin Balm, the Hollow Dream Brightening Pore Minimizing Mask, Perfect Pimple Patch, and then from Jellicoe they have Bubble Tea Steam Cream and also Cherry Blossom Sleeping Mask. So you've pretty much got an entire routine there that you can shop. A lot of these products I've spoken about at length on the show. So powder cleanser is obviously a 2-in-1 product basically. It comes in a really, really fine powder. You foam it up in your hands and then you apply it to a damp face, and it works the same as a foam cleanser, except it's a lot gentler. Great for traveling. Obviously a powder formula cannot squirt in your bag. It cannot go everywhere while you're traveling, which unfortunately happened to me on the way back from the States. I bought a new sunscreen and it exploded in my bag, and it was a tinted sunscreen, so now it's gone everywhere and ruined one of my makeup bags. So that will not happen if you're using a powder cleanser. They are so good to travel with. Bare Skin Balm, obviously a cleansing balm, perfect to use at your first step of your double cleanse routine. Hollow Dream Brightening Pore Minimizing Mask is another 2-in-1 product. It acts as a pore blurrer, so it blurs your pores by giving you this really nice subtle hollow glow, and then also obviously works to gently exfoliate the skin. And then Perfect Pimple Patch, hydrocolloid pimple patch treatment that can be used for whiteheads and things like that. So great if you get breakouts. My favorite way to use that when I'm doing my makeup is to put it over the top of makeup as well, just so that it's less obvious. I find that because they're so flat and so thin, you can barely see them on the skin, but I tend to put them, if I've already done my makeup, over the top of the makeup just as like a concealer, and you cannot see the spot. It's very barely visible. So that is my little hack for how to get the best bang for buck out of your patches. And then obviously Bubble Tea Steam Cream is a moisturizer, can be used day and night. So I think it is a perfect product for people that have dull skin, dehydrated skin, dry skin, mature skin. Oily skin can use it, and I've had a couple of people ask me recently about steam cream for oily skin. I think two things I would recommend is use just a tiny amount, maybe the size of your pinky finger, and I would probably start off using it just at night as a night cream, see how you go. It's probably going to be a little heavy for day for some people with oily skin, and maybe too heavy during the warmer months of the year, so summer, but just give it a try and see how you go. I think there's no problem with using it at night though, as kind of a night cream for oilier skin though. Cherry Blossom Sleeping Mask is obviously a jelly textured sleeping mask, so perfect for all skin types. I would recommend to use it about 2 to 3 times a week, but you can use it more regularly if your skin is really dull, dry, dehydrated, if you have mature skin, or in winter. In winter, I definitely bump up my sleeping mask use. You can even get away with doing it every single night, depending on where you're based. Seoul here, really, really dry winter, long winter, so sleeping masks are an absolute godsend during Korean winter. but they are just some products that you will now easily be able to get your hands on in the States if you are based in the States, which I know a lot of our listeners are. So that is all I had for you for this week. For this week's Tuesday episode, rather, for this week's news headlines and newness drop. And then on Thursday, we will be back and we are chatting Korean beauty trends to watch out for in 2022. So make sure that you are subscribed so that you don't miss that one on Thursday. And I will chat to you then.